that fresh air? Hope she hasn't done whatever that is. Oh. Let's go out to see what Biden looks like. If he smiles, I'll fall out of my chair. Biden, if you smile, I'm gonna fall out of my chair. I could break something. Yeah. Okay, home. News. I don't even know. I haven't been looking things up, really. Aww. Makes me happy. I didn't expect that. I got another channel. That's one. Keep that one. I think whatever that is, I need to get rid of it. What is it? $4 or $54? That looks nice. $4. $4. $5? That's a bullshit. Alright, I'll look. Just by PayPal. I forget what I'm doing here. Here we go. Let's see how many hours ago it was. 1 day ago, forget it.
Increase in the capital gains tax for the wealthy. That's certainly what a lot of people did today, with the Dow losing 321 points. S&P sinking 0.92%. NASDAQ falling 0.94%. Almost all of the decline occurring when news broke of potentially huge change in the investment firmament. Now, we know the current 20% capital gains rate has drawn a great deal of money to the stock market. We can't deny that when George W. Bush cut the capital gains rate, it was an immense windfall for the wealthy. Never sat right with me that we're taxing investment income at the lower rate than your paycheck. But as my old colleague Larry Kudlow would argue endlessly on our old show, Kudlow and Kramer, that lower rate would spur investment by the rich. who might otherwise park their money in something that doesn't generate jobs, like muni bonds. That was back during Bush's first term, long before Larry became Donald Trump's chief economic advisor. Oh, he wanted a capital gains cut. I argued that they should cut the dividend tax rate. Dividends tax rate much higher. Instead, giving people more incentive to own stocks rather than trading in and out of them. I thought
Oh,
it was
he
one or the
raised
other,
the capital
but
gains
the Bush
tax.
administration never met a tax cut that
Oh,
didn't
wait.
So they gave us both. Now, if Biden manages to jack up the capital gains rate, plenty of people will try to take profits. But you know what? Let's explain something right now. There are two major problems with that strategy. First,
Biden
they can
proposes
simply make the tax
increasing
retroactive,
capital
so there's no
gains tax
escape.
from
Second, and I
20%
think much more important, let's get
to
our heads around this right
39
now.
point
It still
something
needs to
percent
pass Congress, and I'm betting Biden doesn't have the votes in the Senate.
for
I can live with
people
taxing capital gains
who earn
for
or
we don't want higher taxes, but I go
earn,
But the
you
idea
know,
that
not always
Biden
jobs,
has 50
investments and
senators who'll
stuff,
vote for this is just
greater
fancy,
than
right?
$1 million
Obama
a
had a
year.
supermajority, and he only raised the capital gains rate from 15% to 20%.
Oh, no, capital gains are different. They're not income, right? Capital gains are then income from your investments. Your profits, I think. They're not, federal income tax. Capital gains are different. Raising the rate is good, right? Because it gets more money out of the rich people to spread around a little. I think raising the rate is good.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
I don't know. I thought Warren Buffett might be a good guy. But I took a nap last evening listening to him, and I don't know.
Berkshire Hathaway.
You're in for a real treat. Very funny man. Please welcome Mr. Bill Hicks.
There you go. Anyways, good to be here. Recording out tonight and tomorrow, so you're, you can make a little more noise than that. That would be.
Tax credit to provide businesses on vaccination. Oh, that's not a big deal. Do people 2 hours off or half of that off to get vaccines? I thought it was going to be paid days off if you got COVID. But that may or may not be also true. I kind of doubt it.
Calling on every employer, large and small.
Uh-oh. They're talking the NIH director. Mandating COVID vaccine will make a lot of sense. That scares me. I've been scared of vaccines since I read about it in
You've talked about talking to communities of faith about vaccine hesitancy.
like 1996.
Is that the issue, though, or is this a larger problem than maybe religious beliefs?
I believe that if we have to get COVID vaccines, that God will protect us because we're children of God and that's what He does. Or He'll give us different cravings, so we'll eat the food that will counteract whatever, I don't know, supplements, colloidal silver. I guess I don't want to listen to this. I'll do a search on Biden. See if I can get anything from today to see if he's smiling. Richard Haney Jr. is behind me and above a little, and he's doing everything he can to bring me low. I enjoyed today so much. Yeah, let's see about buying tax. 7 hours ago, 2 hours ago.
Good afternoon to you both. And I'll come to you first. Elon says, I mean, clearly this has shocked the market, and it's some surprising numbers and headlines in that.
Raising the capital gains tax taxes the rich more, so the tax burden and the burden for budgets can be spread more evenly.
Exactly what Biden had ran on. He has been saying for weeks that there is going to be a social infrastructure bill coming that is going to include increase in taxes on the top income households. The 1 million mark is there. I do think this is a high watermark. It would have been more shocking if this was not going to be included in the plan. And to Elon's point, President Biden was critical in getting the ACA passed, Obamacare, and so for not including those taxes, that would have been the surprise. So this is the high water mark. We're going to negotiate from here. We probably have some compromise, but anyone who's shocked by this has not been paying attention to exactly what Biden has said he's going to do and what he has been doing since he's been inaugurated.
Jimmy, does a capital gains tax above 40%, all things considered, shock you?
If this is
Rich in business and Nasdaq aren't reacting well to Biden's proposed capital gains tax increase.
It was 28%. And listen, it's not that 4%.
2 days ago, they got a conviction on a white cop for killing, with his knee on the guy's neck. Floyd. I can't think of his first name right now.
28%. That even though
George,
Biden
maybe?
was talking about raising the 40% during his campaign, but I think the market expectation is for 28%. And now, if they think it's actually going to be 40% plus another 4%,
Dow's
that's
on
pretty
5,
shocking. That
almost
would explain a
6.
big market sell-off.
Can it get done? Because if it is so shockingly high, Jimmy, presumably Senator Manchin would have to sign off so that.
Oh, Dow Incorporated, not the Dow
How
Average.
likely is that?
Dow Incorporated,
The argument
the
against
company.
is pretty obvious. That one is an historically high rate, and then when you take this rate, combine it to an increasing corporate income tax rate, you have an integrated tax rate that very well may be the highest in the world. I think the fact that people are already backing off that 28% corporate tax rate is a good sign. It's not going to end up being over 40%. That number is like liberal progressive fan fiction. I just don't think that's what we're going to get at the end.
And ultimately, is it
But there are
worth,
so many people, the
focusing on
concentration
these
of
types
wealth at
numbers,
the
trying
top
to get them as high
isn't
as
what
this,
it was
or
in the
should there be other
70s or
aspects
before
to it,
that.
as we often talk
It
about,
changed with Reagan.
step-up basis on capital gains and other potential
The greed is good
loopholes to close
decade.
rather than pushing for such a high number.
Yeah, so I think what I'm looking at here is one of the first lessons I learned in Washington, D.C. is never negotiate with yourself. And so Jimmy might be right. We might end up at 28%. We might have changes to the SALT tax. We might have other kind of parts of the tax code that were eliminated in 2017 that come back in. This is really not at all baked into kind of, as a final deal. This is the start of the conversation. What Democrats do see is that when they are proposing increasing taxes on the wealthiest, especially those who have annual income above $1 million, that's fairly popular kind of in the polls. So they're, of course, going to try to deal with this. What is not discussed is a secret reason, I think, why they are trying to match capital gains, dividends, at ordinary income is the issue of carried interest. That's been a thing that Democrats have tried to do for a long time. We are not seeing a proposal to change carried interest,
You're just
but if
making
you
it
do change all
realistic.
income coming into the household
Probably based
at
on
an
an accurate
ordinary statutory rate of
assessment of your
39.6,
characters
you've dealt with the capital
in your past.
gains issues in carried interest as well. And so I think that's part of the reason why I think Democrats will push for this harder than maybe has been appreciated.
This thing's a money loser.
What about the economic?
It actually loses us revenue. Keep it pretty clear.
I think there are a lot of white people who aren't
What do you mean?
white.
Listen, you know, the
But they're not on television. The white people who are white are on television and they're just having a bad couple days, which it's about damn time.
That's fine. But if the goal here is to raise money for the government, that rate's probably a money loser.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
Is that the mission you were going on about?
It's not fun watching you throw.
I'm Eric Schatzker, and welcome to Bloomberg's Front Row. Today I'm talking to Jeremy Grantham, the revered value investor and co-founder of Boston's GMO. In the dying days of the Trump administration, Jeremy warned U.S. stocks are in a bubble of epic proportions. Now he worries more stimulus to fight the COVID-19 pandemic will only inflate the bubble further, and no amount of Fed liquidity can stop it from bursting.
This is a monetary game, and you can keep these little monetary bubbles going for just so long as you keep confidence rising. But when confidence has reached these levels,
God may be filling their coffers so they don't have to struggle.
it's very difficult.
The United States with its debts to like China, or its payments on its debts to like
Jeremy
China.
and I covered a range of timely topics.
10 years
What
or
happens
so
when the market
or more
finally
ago,
cracks? The right way to
it was
invest
a
in
fact
zero
that many
rate
of you
world.
probably remember
How
that
President Biden can fix the
China
market
was
and
our
help the
greatest
economy.
debtor nation.
Why there's a crisis in American capitalism.
We
Here's
owe
my
them more
conversation
money than
with
any
Jeremy
country.
Grantham.
We have borrowed from them and borrowed from them and borrowed from them, which is a little scary when you think of the power
Started in March of
it could end up giving the Chinese in the United States. As far as I know, foreigners can buy real estate here. We are not protective enough.
In your words, a fully fledged epic bubble. Tell me more.
It would be surprising if you could have one.
Some people throw around the word protectionist as an insult.
Animal spirits.
But you know, you've got to protect the people who are in the country before you go owing a communist country like China. I don't know, hundreds of billions? How big is our deficit? We owe China a lot of it, a good percentage of it. But since the people that have been in power for, what is it now, 60 years since Kennedy died, they've been selling out this country chunk by chunk.
The usual moral hazard that has been going on since Greenspan arrived in the 90s.
That really was a coup d'etat. Kennedy.
The confidence has risen and risen until finally
I didn't know that people need someone to admire. But I read that in one of Nathaniel Brandon's books. He was a philosopher, I guess. He had a close collegiate relationship with Ayn Rand. She wrote The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. And together they wrote a book called The Virtue of Selfishness, which I thought was wonderful. And what it is the virtue of enlightened self-interest. You know, protecting yourself, looking out for yourself, that sort of thing. You know, making decisions that are best for you And that if you make somebody else's desire for that opinion for you, you're just giving power over yourself to someone who probably doesn't have your best interest at heart. I thought The Virtue of Selfishness, it's several chapters. I think they alternate chapters. Ayn Rand does a chapter, then Nathaniel does a chapter. I think that's how it works. I would like to buy that one. I was really impressed with Nathaniel Branden. And then, somehow or other, I may have remembered his name and looked him up on the internet. No, I found him at the library or at a bookstore. He and Ayn Rand had a difference of philosophy, and they split from each other. Well, he split from her, which I thought was a good thing because he was kind of sensitive, kind of insightful. She was a little sharp-edged and chilly. You know, you could tell the way she wrote. And he wrote a book that just really helped me, The Psychology of Self-Esteem. And it's a complex kind of subject, and it's not written like at a 6th grade level or anything. But it was really good. It's really good. It's a very complete book on the psychology of self-esteem. And then he wrote something, Honoring Thyself. I'm not sure I read that one. But then he wrote The Psychology of Romantic Love. It was about romantic love and that healthy relationships have a lot of passion in them. You know, that people want to be making love with each other, you know, every day, every hour if they could. And it wasn't that way with Richard Hanning Jr. and me, though now I know I live with a clone who only at times was an accurate representation of Richard Hanning Jr. But I thought we had a good marriage. I felt loved. He was chilly. He was a cold-hearted person, and he admitted that about himself. And he wasn't emotionally open. He didn't share stuff. He used to say, I keep it all locked in here, which everybody knows is not healthy for you. You know, you need to vent your stuff. But we didn't have a passionate relationship. In the last, maybe, we were married for 18 years and then finally divorced after 20, but maybe in the last 8 years, I wasn't responding, you know. He had hurt me in many ways. He had broken my heart and really trampled on my tender spots. And he told me he loved me 20 times a day. He called during the day at work, stuff like that. And I did feel loved, I did. But I didn't feel honored, I guess you could say. I was very careful with his tender spots, like, I don't know. Just the things that would upset him and, you know, remind him of the bad things in his life before we met and stuff. And he just trampled on my tender spots like a rhinoceros, you know. He was just fucking horrible about it.
The market had resisted opportunities to bubble earlier in this 11-year cycle.
But I felt loved, I did, and I knew he was a cold-hearted man, and I thought it was somewhat of a compliment that he loved me, that I thought he loved me, and stuck with me, you know, stuck in the relationship for so long. So much of my life has been about being a survivor of ritual abuse and mind control. I mean, it's just something you can't overlook or brush aside. I mean, you have to understand it. You have to try to find ways, maybe to intellectualize your way out of the strong emotions. I don't know. But it was too big to ignore. And he didn't support me. You know, and survivors of ritual abuse and mind control, they can be strong and beautiful and classy, because Trudy Chase, the author of One Rabbit House. I saw her on Phil Donahue, and I think it was Phil Donahue. And she was just really classy. I was so impressed by her. But you know, in many ways inside, we're very, very fragile. And very easily broken in small ways. Like what Richard Henning Jr. seems to be an expert at doing. It's just bringing me lower and lower and lower and lower. Making me feel guilty about being happy or relaxed. God showed me some examples from me and Richard Henning Jr.'s life of how he used to just knock me down. You know, and it wasn't even harsh words. It was just the way he'd use his words or his tone of voice or, you know, that kind of thing. God showed me some examples, and one of them was on video. We had these round discs. There was a hill at Timber Falls in Blakely, Pennsylvania. You walk down our sidewalk, and then there's a grassy area with a bench to sit on. And then it's just a pretty steep hill. So it had snowed a lot, and Rich and Richard and I had gone out to go on the saucers. But I didn't want to go on them. I don't like going downhill fast. I did the speed slide at the Dells, Wisconsin Dells, at that water park. The big one that everybody knows about. I did the speed slide once, and I was so shook up by the time it was over. And I almost broke my big toe in my left foot. I was so shook up, I was so triggered, I couldn't really do anything at that park after that. Speed is not my thing. That may have to do with whatever NASA did to me. The only thing I know NASA did to me, you know, that I knew before I read anything about it, was the G-force shit. You know, they train astronauts to withstand high G-force. That's the only thing I remember. But I don't like this speed shit. I don't like to sled down a steep hill. I don't like to go down a steep water slide like a speed slide. It triggers me. It shakes me up. So, well, actually, it was the two of them that were going to go on the saucers. I never had any intention of going on one. But in a mild kind of, not mild, but in a subtle kind of way, Richard Henning Jr. berated me until I agreed to go down on a saucer. And I didn't go very far, and I stopped myself because I was afraid. And he called me a chicken and all this kind of stuff. You know, he knew the whole time. I told him almost from the first. I'm sure I told him before we were married. I know I did it for a fact. That I'm a survivor of Satanism and mind control and surgery and torture and stuff like that. And those are really tender spots. And he was very cruel in his way of, I love you, Purdy, I love you, Purdy. Chicken, chicken, chicken. I don't know. I guess he trained for this. But he's doing it now. You can tell in my eyes. I'm not as happy as I was an hour ago. It was nice to see Dee. I saw her innocent child face for about 4 seconds. And she was sitting in the chair and we were talking. You know, she just looked like a little girl for a second in her face. And it was nice. She's a pretty girl. She's got a pretty spirit, you know. Satanists are trying to get her to cross the line. They hate it when she's here. They hate it when we interact. They tortured my feet and my lower legs while she and I were interacting, because they really want her soul.
Jeremy, even some of the skeptics were awed by the power the Fed displayed back in March.
But I felt
in a single day,
overwhelming passion for Paul. You know, sexual. Sexual in love.
rebound
I really did.
in stocks. And those
I'd much
same
rather
people
be with Paul, and
wonder if the Fed
when I
could
realized
prevent
that he was
a
God and
bear
only
market
God
collapse
could
then.
tell me to get
Why
a
can't
divorce,
it?
because
Through whatever
marriage has
means
always
it
been
conjures
something
up,
very sacred to
prevent
me.
a bear market
I
collapse
didn't
then.
enter into it lightly, but I didn't
If you
enter
go
into
back
it
to before,
because of love. I did it because of
what you see
circumstances
is we have lost
and
considerable
like,
strength in the economy. We have
or a
fewer
strong
people
feeling
working.
of being liked.
We have a
The Bible says she loves those who love her,
of goods and services.
and
We have a crisis.
Richard Haney Jr. seemed
So
to love
if
me
you
at the
believe in
beginning,
market efficiency, which is wrong? Was it
and
wrong
I
before,
responded
or
to
is
it, and
wrong
then,
now? But
as
is it
far as
really
I knew, he
justified?
got me
Because
pregnant
with a
when
serious
it
boom
was kind of
in the global
deliberate.
economy and the global stock
It was
market
kind of a
has
trick.
gone way up. It doesn't feel right. I think we all know that. This is a monetary debt, and you can keep these little monetary
Anyway.
bubbles going for just so long. As long as you keep confidence rising.
I'm glad that Biden
When
proposes
confidence has reached
a raise in the
its
capital
low,
gains
the
tax.
three books are pretty clear.
The news guys are saying, or CNBC or some, are saying that it's a negotiating point, that 39%.
There are many arguments.
They
for
balk at
why
28%.
current
It's at 20 right
valuations
now,
are appropriate.
and Biden wants to raise it.
I suspect
He may be doing it because God wants him to raise
they
it.
range from discounting
The imbalance of
loans
income in
at
this
a lower
country
rate,
has gotten worse since the 70s.
reach for yield by institutions
Just
that have
way worse.
targets to meet, to the difficulty of modeling modern businesses. I take it, Jeremy, you find none of these arguments the slightest bit persuasive.
You know, I've been around to see a 16% 30-year bond, and I now see a whatever it is, 2.5. And we've seen real rates in 2000. Real rates on the tips was 4.1, 4.2, real guaranteed forever, and now they're nothing. And of course, they're negative, and they're negative all over the world. And what you're doing, therefore, is you're saying we've got an artificial interest rate structure, clearly artificial, that has been driven down all over the world into negative territory. 20% of government bonds have a negative real return. And we're going to use that as a yardstick. We're going to say stocks are cheap because they are less utterly ludicrous than a 30-year bond, or cash, which is deeply negative. This is not typically the way you measure things, by taking a ludicrously mispriced comparison, and that's what we're doing. It makes people feel happy. It doesn't make me feel happy.
Jeremy, if you're right and we're on the cusp of the bursting of an epic bubble, is now the time to, as they say, sell everything?
I suspect selling everything would work out just fine. However, having said that, there are major discrepancies, as there were in 2000, between the U.S. tech, which is overpriced the same as it was in 2000, and everything else. So the value stocks, the low growth stocks, which you prefer, are about as cheap relative to the high growth stocks as they ever get. So they will not have the same pay. But they're still at risk to some degree, I suspect. The good news is that overseas, they have not had this same huge bull market and the same overpricing that we have had. And that, of course, is a heaven-sent opportunity, because you can go out into the emerging markets, and they are absolutely not that expensive, despite the ridiculous argument comparisons with the overpriced bond market. They're simply not that bad anyway. And compared to the S&P, they're as cheap as they have ever been about. They've been this cheap 2 or 3 times, and each time it's worked out very well. So you can buy emerging markets, and you can look at the intersection of those two ideas, which is the low growth stocks or the value stocks within emerging. And they are handsomely priced. You should be able to make a really decent 10, 20-year return. You will not make a handsome 10 or 20-year return from U.S. growth stocks. There is in the air a simple arithmetic. The higher you bid up the price of an asset, the lower the long-term return you will get. There is equation. Every day, the market goes higher. You know only one thing with certainty, that the long-term return will be less than it was the day before.
Jeremy, growth stocks have, over the course of the bull market, outperformed value stocks by almost 400 basis points. What if, after the bubble pops, growth is still ahead and there is no redemption for the value investor?
What happens if that happens? Then there'll be a lot of sad value managers. Now, the question is, will it happen? And it would be historically unprecedented for that to happen. Pretty certainly will not. However, having said that, to say one thing about value, I have no confidence and have not had any for over 20 years in price to book, PE, price to cash flow, price to sales, as a measure of true value. A measure of true value is the long-term discounted value of the future streams of dividends. A growth stock is, of course, worth a higher ratio of this, that, and the other than a low growth stock. But that doesn't mean they can't be overpriced. So value should be cheap for what you are. You should build in the growth, you should build in the quality, and if it's overpriced, it's overpriced. But to use a simple-minded measure of book is a crazy idea. A cheap book is the market's load on the worst assets out there in the marketplace. The lowest PE is the market's load on the worst earnings, most likely to be overstated or downgraded. And the same with yield. It's the market's load the most likely to be cut. These have no business being a good indicator of future performance.
Besides cash and value and emerging market stocks, is there anywhere else for an investor to hide?
I'm also worried, by the way, about inflation. If you think you live in a world where output doesn't matter and you can just create paper, sooner or later you're going to do the impossible, and that is bring back inflation that we haven't seen for 20 years. And you keep it up on a global basis, you will have inflation. And I can't help but notice that around the world, the commodity prices of all kinds really, but particularly critical food and critical metals are going up. And if you have that happen, and you have a rapidly declining growth rate in workforce towards zero and negative, you are really set up for this time is different. So we are not just in a bubble market, but we're looking at a global economy that is at an inflection point to turn down in long-term growth. So this is a bad time for overspeculating.
What is the right way to allocate? Irrespective of the bubble, what is the right way to allocate in a world of zero rates, stimulus ad infinitum, declining productivity, the potential for inflation, and the list goes on?
First of all, very difficult. Secondly, of course, diversifying is design. And thirdly, amazing. The low growth stocks in the emerging market are perfectly reasonable. If you need to own stocks, and most people do, that would be perfectly reasonable. And I also think shares that benefit from the greening of the economy will do much better than the rest. Anything to do with renewable energy, electrification of the system, electric cars, etc. These are all going to have top-line revenues that dwarf the declining growth rate of the rest of the global economy. It will take trillions of dollars to decarbonize the global system. It will dominate any portfolio. And if you have to own a U.S. stock, they're the ones to own. And look around for good climate change funds, as it's said, you know how to. And they're doing very well now.
What was that?
Good. Finally, took 20 years to take up. In the last year, people really are beginning to understand the size of the problem and the need
you've invested in gold before, do you see any promise, as a growing number of investors do, in Bitcoin or other forms of cryptocurrency? What is the future happening?
Richard Andrews doing something in there.
They will never tell you to do it. If you're desperate, can you read it? No, you can't. Its entire value is on the way to forward. So Bitcoin could be worth $1 million to you if you can find someone to pay. So
Would you say the same about gold? Doesn't generate any dividends.
I'm gonna stop recording and upload this.
Can't eat it either.